okay, now that we are done with that, we can go and talk about the Wong Kim Ark decision, because this is the decision that is that I walk into the freaking, store last night. I always get complimented on my hair. All right. Thank you. I'm just going to say it. I do. And women always say that, but I joke. I'm like, yeah, well, my hair, because it defies the law of gravity, and the reason I say that is because when I read this freaking case, Wong Kim Ark, literally, it threw my hair back. I couldn't believe what I was reading. It was like the missing link, the missing proof to where the heck we're coming from and why we're here. Because ever since I started studying this stuff, and I started going to courtrooms, and I've been in courtrooms a lot, guys. I mean, I've been in the court a lot. All right. I went in one year, I went in over 40 times ex parte. And I got my ass handed to me and humiliated and just about contempt. But you learn by getting in the courtroom and fighting and getting you realizing what doesn't work. And of course, when I started, I tried everything wrong, putting a name on a stamp and a thumbprint and doing all these weird things that you think matter and they have no relevance. But really learning that there was a real problem, because when I first went in there, I thought, well, I have all these rights, constitutional rights, Declaration of Independence. This is a great protection. Look at it. This court's going to respect me. They're going to honor me. Shoot, I'm sovereign. Well, I went into court and realized that ain't the case at all. I'm just a piece of property to them. They're putting me through like a cattle chute, like everybody else, even if it's a traffic ticket situation. They're banging the gavel down. You lose, get out, pay the money, move on, surfs, get out of my way, get out of my face. I've never been treated so bad. Why? And it wasn't until Wong Kim Ark and this 1895 decision where a Chinese guy, 1898 decision where a Chinese guy in San Francisco was born in San Francisco. His parents were born in China. He was visiting China, and when he came back, he got stopped at the border and detained. He wasn't let back in. And then he gets charged with whatever the crime was at the time for trying to enter into the United States as an immigrant without a right to be here, even though he was born here. Now he's being detained and charged by the United States. He appeals to the United States Supreme Court, gets an attorney, and people get behind him. He appeals. And the United States Supreme Court takes the case up on what's called cert, and they decide that they're going to use this case and this Chinese guy to set the precedent for everybody else on the 14th Amendment and define our new law system that we're under. So we all can thank this decision here for why we, in a good way, because now we know the history. And this sucker, okay, what happens here, when you read this case, it's a long opinion. Well, it's not that long. It's 45 pages. But the court's going to build the foundation. All right. It's going to build its foundation for pages and pages and pages of where we come from. And it's going to build its case for the 14th Amendment and why it's okay to bring forward this old feudal law, the English common law. And the court's building its case to do so because it says here there wasn't enough common law decisions under the 14th Amendment yet at this time. So, our law system, this is what the court's reasoning is, it says that we're a common law system. And so since we didn't have any decisions to look at, well, we had to go back and look at the old English common law prior to the Declaration of Independence. That's their justification here. So they're going to go through and make the case as to what was it like back in those days. Lord Hale, and all these old cases in England and Scotland and the British, and Lord Chancellor Hathaway said that these questions of naturalization and domicile, and talking about the last 3 centuries of the old English common law, we're within the allegiance and obedience and faith and loyalty and protection and the power of the jurisdiction of the English sovereign. Praise to the king, hail to the king. This is the beauty of this case, is that it lays out where this comes from, again, to the 14th Amendment citizen, Wong Kim Ark. He's a 14th Amendment citizen. So its main purpose is where it's doubtless was as often been recognized by this court to establish the citizenship of a free Negroes. This is talking about the 14th Amendment, which had been denied in the opinion by Chief Justice Cheney in Dred Scott versus Sanford, 1857, and all put doubt that all blacks, as well as whites who were born or naturalized within the jurisdiction of the United States, were citizens of the United States, the slaughterhouse cases. So they're making allegiance for protection, talking about here, the Supreme Court citing here that allegiance for protection are in this connection, relation to citizenship, reciprocal obligations. The one is compensation for the other. Allegiance for protection, protection for allegiance. So, and from the nature of the case, no other law could be obligatory from them. And where there is no protection for or allegiance or sovereignty, there can be no claim for obedience. No, if there is no protection, there can be no claim for obedience. See that? That's a clue right there. So if I'm not asking for protection, I don't owe obedience to that crown. Okay. That tells us right here. Now, it's impossible to construe the words "are subject to the jurisdiction thereof" into opening sentence unless comprehensive words within the jurisdiction in the concluding sentence of the same section, or hold that persons within the jurisdiction of the states of the Union are not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. Boy, it's an absolute legal minefield in the 14th Amendment. But it's talking about these different, what causes the United States to have jurisdiction over those citizens. And if you think about it, there's two questions. Here's that Mr. Fish citation that we talked about earlier. There's two questions. One, are you a U.S. citizen? Are you a national? Are you a resident? Our whole life, we've answered those questions. Yes. Sounds like a pretty good thing. But is that, do we actually, those are legal words, U.S. citizenship and residence. And because they're legal words, without a clear understanding of what they actually mean, aren't we just giving consent volunteering back into this same old system? Here, this is where the court went to President Grant in 1873, and it asked for clarification on requiring the opinions of the members of the cabinet, several questions of allegiance on naturalization and expatriation. Mr. Fish, in his opinion, which is much weight by this court, he says that every independent state has one of its incidents of its sovereignty, state's sovereignty, and the right of municipal legislation, jurisdiction over all persons within its territory, and therefore may change their nationality by naturalizations, and thus without regard to the municipal laws of this country, whose subjects are so naturalized, as long as they remain or exercise the rights conferred by naturalization within the territory or jurisdiction of the state which grants it. What does that mean? It means we got two forms of citizenship. And according to the Immigration and Nationality Act, these two forms of citizenship are all citizens are U.S. nationals and U.S. citizens. They call them U.S. nationals under international law. Everybody's a U.S. national and a U.S. citizen. Well, then why the heck don't we know anything about this U.S. national thing? I mean, if you look into it, you think that, well, doesn't that mean American Samoa or this other country that nobody ever heard of before? I mean, isn't that what that's all about? Well, whatever happened to the old state citizenship under the 14th Amendment? Remember how, in the old law, it talked about there was a state citizen? Where'd that go? How come it's never talked about? Then if you go online, you really start following people out there, you'll start hearing about these things called state national and American national. And these are, sovereign citizen terms that have absolutely no foundation in our current law. There's none. And you want to call yourself that, you'll be considered a sovereign citizen. That's if that's what you want to be. But if you look at the actual Immigration and Nationality Act, it says all citizens are U.S. nationals. Now, let's stop the video there, and I'm going to show you that next. All right, so